Hello, everyone. I'm just going to give it a couple minutes for people to log in, and then we'll get started.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is a Connexion 2023 virtual total rewards benefit session. We're going to be looking at the unique challenges of going across borders with benefits. I'd like to thank all of the folks who are joining today and my esteemed new friends and new colleagues here as we go forward with a lot of interesting questions, and hopefully that'll bring up a lot of really good discussion. So, give you an example. Given the tremendous variation across all the borders, we have we have companies around the world that have lots of different unique challenges. What are some of the best practices that you guys have had to adopt to ensure that, hey, your benefits are administered transparently and consistently? Like for us, we call it a one done approach. Have you experienced any pushbacks from those employees in the regions, or kind of been resource constrained, or have challenges in the commitments relative to the locations? The kind of first question really big, because I wanted to make sure to give you a lot of playroom to kind of talk about how have you handled this big challenge? Everyone says the world is smaller, but I still say we have a lot of large border challenges.
All right, Brian, I'll go ahead and get us started. So my name is Lisa Singh. I'm the Global Head of Benefits at Datavant. And I think you summed it up perfectly, Brian. The biggest challenge is the feedback we get from employees in different countries. And what I would say kind of to start with is, if you're a US-based country or you have a US-based team, don't approach everything with a US lens. And the US is more the anomaly and the exception than the norm across the world as we look to benefits and practices. And so try and put that US lens aside, leverage and forget all the fundamentals that because they may not apply in every country, and they probably won't. Leverage your benefits broker and consultant for knowledge and information. Leverage your local resources for knowledge and information. And you can start with that global benefits philosophy and approach. What's important as an organization? What do you want to offer? Where do you want to be from a benchmark standpoint? And then you benchmark locally, and you're finding locally relevant benefits that's at the local market. So you can say globally, we want to be at market in health coverage, above market in retirement plans, for example. And then you go in each country, and how that looks and feels in each country differs and varies. And then you get the employees where they're always saying, well, the US has this benefits and we want that. Why don't we have that? And you're always going to hear that noise. And part of the challenges is you're communicating a lot of times in a global communications channel. It could be your company intranet or global, messages to the whole company. And you're always starting with US benefits, or you're touching on US benefits if that's the biggest part of your population. And so employees in all the countries are seeing what you're offering and wanting what they don't have. But then in each country, in the UK, for example, they have a year of, parental leave. And, it's like, well, we would want that, but they want our benefit that they don't have. And so it's educating local managers and leadership and being sensitive in your communications about we offer locally competitive benefits and what that means, and to always promote and highlight what those are in those particular countries. So it's setting the expectation, communication and education of those local leaders, and then being sensitive in your messaging.
Elisa, I'd love to build on that if that's okay. Robert Rigby Hall, I'm the Chief People Officer for Orvion Global. We're a global cosmetics business. Laura Mercier, Bare Minerals, Buxom, three of our main brands. And we operate across 30 odd countries. And I'd echo exactly what Lisa said around education, around sort of market competitiveness. When Lisa, you talk philosophy, we kind of talk principles of local market for base level benefits, typically mandated government benefits when you get outside the US. And then we try to have all other benefits be consistent globally. There's probably some middle ground. And we try and look for opportunities where we can differentiate by having those benefits operate globally. So in practice, what that means is, maybe 401k in the US, profit sharing in France, it may be defined contribution pension in the US and the UK, all driven by local market requirements, but then layering onto that in that sort of middle ground, everybody gets vacation, but again, it varies based on market competitiveness. But then stuff starts to differ. And you get different things in different countries. But there's also this chance to build the global culture with some of the enhancements. So I'm thinking about global office closures for the holidays. We are committed 100% to a hybrid work environment, 3 days a week in office, no ifs, no buts. That's our commitment. Summer hours operating globally. Some of those things are unique differentiators because many countries don't operate the concept of summer hours. So it's a great chance to provide an enhanced benefit and be seen as a global organization. And then every time an employee says, hold on, I don't understand why the Canadians get gym membership, it's a chance for us to educate and say, well, in the US, you get 3 days of wellness days. That's part of that trade-off. If you'd rather give up those wellness days and have gym membership, then we can have a conversation about that. And then they're like, no. I'd far rather have my wellness days. So that's how we tend to think about it in terms of the sort of, to your point, philosophy or the principles. And then how can we differentiate locally by building things on a global basis?
All right. So I'll follow through on that. Absolutely. So I'm Uma, and I am the Vice President of Global HR Operations for a telecommunications software technology company, Mavenir, headquartered here in Richardson, Texas. So yes, the workforce, and I think the other important dynamics about the organization is we have employees footprint in staff in about 40 countries, and employees where we are directly managing employee benefits in over 30 countries. Right? So brings that whole complexity to the workforce demographics. And very nicely said by both Lisa and Rob, having that philosophy of what is the company's philosophy that we want to make sure, regardless of the country, we want to make sure that there is an assured level of benefits. It could be with regards to life insurance. It could be regards to employee assistance program. And that's one as an example where we didn't have some benefits which we've learned along the way can be very global in nature as an offering, and do that parity check and say, okay, why do we not offer it? Well, you don't really have that rationale. Why is there not a gym membership in the US while it is there in Canada? There is a good explanation like the way Rob said, but there are some that you discover that doesn't have a rationale. You just never spend time about it, and then bring those kind of equality in benefits between countries. I think that's kind of sends the message, especially aside from the fact US is an anomaly. When you're headquartered in the US, it can reek of like, oh, you're just having a very US lens in decision making to all parts of the world. So you demonstrate it by really bringing in one, a global company philosophy, two, preempting that we have expertise and knowledge from on the ground by crowdsourcing inputs from the employees on the ground, and also showing our partnership with the local brokers and local advisors. So it's not a very HQ-based decision, but it's really in partnership with local knowledge and local experience factored in. I think those two go a long way in building the confidence that there is definitely, while there could be global philosophy that is driving some decisions. There is a lot of local competitiveness that's getting tailored to. So we've done that, and there are a few programs. Global Employee Assistance Program is one as an example. Two is establishing parity and what are life and AD&D benefits across countries, which involves checking in Europe what could be coming through as social benefits, but showing that we have those standards established are great first beginners to having people embrace the company's philosophy around benefits. It's a great one.
Well, thank you. This is Brian Coleman. I'm the Vice President of Total Rewards. I'm giving you guys all a virtual hug because you are brilliant in the sense of basically everything that we're doing as well. Our motto is think globally, act locally. And then from the benefit side of the equation, we try to make sure that just like you, we're linking in our organizational strategy, we're linking in the business strategy. And one of the things that we did was we went back to our go-to-market strategy from 1990, 1950, which was we know, we care, and we can help. So what we try to do all the time is look at a Dawn-centric approach, a one Dawn approach. And many of my colleagues here had said, about gym membership. In the Netherlands, I would love the bike discount. In the UK, I would love the bike piece as well. So it can be separate but equal. And that's one of those things that we are doing the same sort of thing. I think one of the best practices from the global perspective is this is my second round going through this. So when I first came to Dawn 15 years ago, we looked at everything. We figured out where we were, what we needed to have from a compensatory perspective from all the organizations, all the global. Then we looked at local, what did folks need and want, and then we compared it to the marketplace. But I'm in the happy food business. I do cakes, cookies, and muffins, what everybody loves. Those go stale. So does our data. So that's one of those things of some of the best practices is that you're never on your laurels. You're always going back and re-looking at it, re-examining it. I love Uma with the EAP and looking at things that you can bring out. So we partnered with a family planning. So we did EAP globally. That went okay. Utilization still small, but now we're looking at family planning. And we have it in North America. And coming to a theater near you in Europe and Amiap in the first quarter of next year, and then Latin America in the second quarter of next year. So things that Robert had said and Uma had said and that Lisa had said were exactly that. And here's some examples. You just got to keep going through these things to kind of, where do we want to be in a year, 2 years, of envisioning what does this look like? With that, I kind of got my next question was, what are the core barriers or, the unappreciated challenges that prevent some of those plans? Some of it might be that just the simple fact of your local president, wherever they are, knows comp, knows benefits. We don't really need your help. We're doing just fine on ourselves. Or, what are those things that are your barriers? And then we'll talk about what are those kind of solutions that you kind of came up with to address those barriers. Come on,
Brian,
Robert.
Barriers to global benefits.
Yeah, so I can see Robert's eyes here. I already know that he has lived through some of these in the past, and he's.
No, I'm going to let somebody else go first.
Okay. All right, Uma.
So barriers to bringing in programs that will be well appreciated or be able to make that conviction about where it comes from and how we are competitive. Especially, I speak from experience in this organization, as I talked about having footprint in so many countries. You also have places where the presence, right? It's not just about being present there. What kind of plans you bring to the table varies because of the size of the group. So some instances you have is where you are having to be part of a group program only because the number of lives that you're covering is very small. Whereas you'll have members who have people in their network experiencing a much broader plan or a program elsewhere. So being able to have those nuances of it's not just knowing that these are benefits offered, but in terms of what an employer can offer is very tailored to the profile of the organization in that particular country. That I've seen that come in the way of members being able to appreciate that this is the best that an employer can provide, because it's not just about as an employer benefit. The negotiation power, the size of the group, all of those varies depending on how many lives are covered. So that's definitely one of the challenges. Two, sometimes it's not about a president who says, oh, I know what the benefits are, but there could be some decision makers who you are trying to get involved in the decisions who may have their own personal opinions or preferences that comes in the way of what those decisions are. And then as HR, we'll need to be able to make sure that the decisions that are finally made are representative of what would benefit the larger group as well. And it's not tailored to one individual person's opinion, especially when you have a very small group that you can survey or you are trying to do. Because yes, depending on size of organizations, that becomes another challenge. The third part is, I think we address it preemptively saying, communicate, communicate, and communicate. We sometimes struggle with not having communicated and then having to react when someone says, oh, why is this particular benefit not there in my program, right? And then when you're reacting, it ends up being perceived as being defensive about the program that was stood up. And I think very good lessons along the way and good to get started is over communicate. There's nothing like over communication when it comes to having employees understand what's in the package or the bundle that's given to them. So those are the three things that I would say are barriers that I come to my mind, top of my mind, when you ask about what are barriers in being able to stand up benefits across borders.
Yeah, similar to what Uma was saying about kind of local leadership having their preferences. I think first you have to find a vendor. If you're trying to find a global vendor, a lot of times the vendors that you're looking at are not great in every single country. Either they don't service all regions or all countries that you're in, or they service some really well and others not as well. So then when you're trying to apply one vendor for, you talked about family planning and EAP, is there one vendor that does it well in all countries? So then are you compromising and saying, well, we want that one vendor for that one program, and we're okay in these countries that they're not top tier, because in these other countries they are, and then you're getting the local leadership saying, well, we want that vendor because they're best in our country or our region. And then another region saying, well, we want this other vendor because they're best in our region. We came up across that with a gym benefit, trying to find a global gym vendor, and the different regions had different preferences based on how strong and how well perceived that vendor was in those regions. And so trying to get to a solution and then deciding, when do you select that global vendor, or when do you decide to have that global benefit but have regional vendors? And who's making that decision? How is it being made? What are the pros and cons? And so kind of going through that process as well. And then the other challenge I would say is vendor management and procurement. We, again, as a US based country, our vendor management is trying to apply US regulations and standards in some cases to other countries and regions in terms of contracting and what's being required of that vendor. And in many countries, it either doesn't exist what we're asking for, or it's not normal or common, or every vendor doesn't have that. And so I need this benefit. None of the vendors in this country offer what our security and privacy team or our procurement team on terms and conditions is asking for. And I need to find a way forward. And they're saying, but we need this in the contract, or they need to be able to show X. And so that's been a challenge internally of working through with procurement on trying to get to some type of agreement. In my worst case scenario, it took me 2 years to get a health assessment provider in Israel because the hospital wanted a one-page, we're going to provide the service for X. And that did not fly with our procurement team. And so the simplest things can be very challenging and take a long time. So that's one of the challenges I've seen from that global perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so much of this goes back to the theme that's been going through all of this around education. And that includes educating global leadership, local leadership, global procurement, global legal, et cetera, global compliance. Yeah, I'm lucky. I've kind of been fortunate enough to live and work in 5 countries across 3 continents. And when I think about this, I think about scale. So, the largest organization I led HR in was 32,000 people. I'm now in the smallest I've ever led HR in at 1,200, and I think I'm loving this one more than I love the 32,000. I think about time and resources. I think about priorities, and I think about trade-offs. And that, to your point, Lisa, around the trade-offs of, well, I can't get this gym membership here. I'm going to reduce benefit in terms of locally perceived quality in this country, but I'm going to enhance it in these other 10 countries. And of course, guaranteed, this one country is the one that has the loudest voice. So those trade-offs become really difficult. And trying to find global application of things. I've got a good example right now. We're going through a new recognition and reward platform, which we're rolling out globally. The only country that has anything is the UK. And for them, this is a takeaway because the local platform that they have is perceived to be, and to some extent in reality, is better than the one that we're going to be providing. But everybody else across the world is getting a gain. So the global rollout, but then I'm also a really big believer in local sort of testing in a market. So the reverse of this is in the UK, we've been testing for the last 6 months, becoming menopause accredited. We are an 85% female organization. So some of these things, including, fertility treatment, egg freezing, are big, big priorities for our population. So looking at menopause certification in the UK, and then we're saying, okay, so how would we then take that to other large populations like the US, like our business in Japan? Where is it going to be locally applicable, but how would that be perceived as a benefit? And some will view it really positively, others maybe a bit more standoffish. So yeah, that's a little bit more about how I think about it.
So if I may add one comment, Brian, while we talk, thinking and reflecting on all the barriers, on the flip side, I can say one standout positive that I see with taking this approach of trying to bring in global view of benefits and trying to see where we want to carry. And some of those that you're able to do, like EAP is an example. There are also other wellness programs that can be replicated across borders without much of a tailoring for local content, right? So as an example, yesterday, we led a wellness session with a coach who spoke to people virtually. Of course, we found a time zone that could work for most people. And it was around the signs of sleep, the need for quality sleep and wellness. And I did participate there. And one of the things I saw was there's so much synergy with people talking and chiming and sharing about a lot of challenges that they talk about as to why they are not able to make sure they have a routine around sleep. Some of the things that were being brought out and said, why are you not able to do it? Why do you have issues? And then people talk about it. And I thought, oh, there's cross-border synergy being developed when we're creating this opportunity for teams across the world to get together. And one, we've demonstrated as a company, we care about your wellness. 2, they're able to realize, okay, what I'm going through is not just unique to me. It's also my colleagues in Czech Republic seem to face this. My colleagues in India have this too. My colleagues in Canada have it too. So it's nice. I think there are so many positives if we can understand how we manage benefits globally and bring in. I think that's definitely an upside to a global lens.
I think that's great, Uma. And that really gets towards help building the culture as well, building relationships across the organization, building the culture across the organization is bringing people together and having that same experience. One of the other things we did is around, storytelling. And so as we're talking about, marketing and communication of benefits and some of the challenges of a global, platform where you're communicating to all employees. Well, we led with a parental bonding story from, one of our employees in India, where, they talked about, taking the bonding leave and their family experience. And so again, trying to share stories across the globe with all employees to help with that bonding. And it's also promoting benefits. And I think, while we can't always, the development of our benefits in each country varies over time based on, how much resources we have, how we're developing and where we can put our time and efforts. And so I think one of the tools too, like you said, is leveraging webinars or leveraging these types of events that potentially are easier to roll out globally or to multiple locations, easier than adding a new program or a new vendor, that can really add value and be kind of a quick win of, having even the existing vendors in a country, do a webinar or a session, that if employees are asking for a certain benefit or want something and we couldn't do that right away, let's provide something and promote the benefits we have and leverage our existing providers and vendors and utilize those services.
We're kind of talking about communications and, really getting those clear communications. And, my original question was, hey, how are you getting, how we always talk about financial literacy, but how are you getting benefits literacy with language barriers, with time zones, those, different populations? But I added to it when I thought about it earlier today, it's also, how are you addressing not only cultural differences, but also addressing different generational differences? So one of the things that we did, and everyone thought we were kind of crazy, is we brought out a private label YouTube channel to get information across to our team members. And I can't remember from one of these other Connex things that I got inspired. We're going to be rolling out podcasts. We already have podcasts for financial literacy, but what are you guys doing to address? I mean, that there's a lot of moving parts within any communication strategy, any change strategy, but how are you bringing in, the barriers, the time zones, the literacy, even just the cultural thing? So if I say something that I want to do in the States, doesn't mean that it really translates well in Latin America. So how are you guys handling these things?
I think one of the basics is leveraging your local resources. So, basics of, to your point of language, what you call something in one country, how you spell it is different. UK prime example, are you enrolling with 2 L's or 1 L? Are you getting a flu shot or are you getting a flu jab? Just the fundamentals of trying to make sure that, again, US-based company, our countries outside feel like stepchildren, and we don't want that. So how can we be a global company and bring everybody together? And part of it is recognizing local norms, local language, and in communications, keeping those in mind and in consideration, whether it's an office manager, if you have a small office, if you don't have an HR team there, or kind of a local broker, however you can leverage that to influence it. And then keeping in mind too, not only global holidays, but also global religious observances that may not be a holiday. Don't schedule meetings on those days. Don't schedule a webinar on a particular benefit when it's a local practice of a religious holiday. And so be conscious and aware of that. So a lot of it is awareness, and going back to Robert's, education and awareness and sensitivity, and leveraging resources, and don't think that you know it all.
Brian, great examples you provided. I'm quite inspired as well by those examples of YouTube and podcasts that you talked about. Sure, it relates so well to the younger people in the workforce lately. I know one other aspect which I know appeals a lot more to people lately is those very small nano sessions, as they call it, right? I can play back and see it, but it's a short one. So even though it's general practice convention is you do a webinar about the benefits and you say a recording is available, but still the recording is about an hour for me. So I might choose to have flexibility. You offer me flexibility, but it's still trying to take up 1 hour of my session. So if we can make the effort to glean the highlights, the snippets, and what you call the nano session delivered and make a very short one, I think it hits a lot of high notes among people. And that's another area to innovate in how the communication is delivered to employees. Robert, you were saying?
The only thing I was going to add was, and it wasn't at odds, but it was a different approach, Lisa, to what you said. I think we've taken the stance of saying we're an American company and we're going to spell it with a Z and you're going to get over it. And most of the people globally are used to working for an American company. And that's just like if you worked for a L'Oreal, which would be one of our competitors, an expectation that there's a French sort of tinge to a lot of what goes on and a lot of the communication. So we've been unapologetic with our office population about communicating in a more US-centric way. Our retail population, many of whom don't have English as a strong second language, then we do localize for them. But there's very little that comes out from the center to that retail population. Everything we do is to the office population, and then it gets cascaded on. I do think we try and do as much as we can on video, to the point, Uma, that you made around small snippets. That's super important as well. Our population is fairly youthful. So for us, the older demographic is less of a relevant concern, I guess, even though I fall into that older demographic. But we've also been really good about trying to do things like we've done virtual yoga classes globally. People have loved it, absolutely lapped it up. We do a global office day every month. So every office, the same day of the month, does an office day. We have the same theme, maybe a little bit of local adaptation, but the same theme. And we do drinks in the office, we do food in the office, most people come in, and it's a moment of bringing people together because we are a hybrid organization, 3 days in the office. So that's a moment of solidarity, which reaffirms one of our values as well. So that for us has been a really good thing to do. I think the biggest obstacle has probably been getting the US HR team who drives most of this to think globally. And it's not anything because the will, the intent is all there, but it's not even a lack of experience because some do have it, but it's a lack of catching themselves at the last minute. And I get frustrated when I miss stuff because I should know better, but I still miss stuff. So that I think is one of the biggest challenges is the, to the point, Brian, that you made about think global, but act local.
Robert, what you said about the office day, I can say is very inspiring. Just the way it sounded very energizing. And I will say that's another inspiration I'm taking away from this discussion to look at how we can replicate. Give me some examples of themes. You said worldwide you have a same theme. What are some examples of themes?
So we did a wellness one that was a wellness month. We did a women's monthly one that was focused very much on women's stories. So we put up a board and people told stories. They did little videos of what inspired them. This month we're doing giving thanks.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Nothing tied to Thanksgiving because that would be US, but giving thanks. And globally, why not? We got to pick a time to give thanks to. So we're doing a kudos board, which is a sort of whiteboard where everybody can write a moment of giving thanks to an individual in the organization or a team, and then we'll publish that. So we're trying to pick, themes that may tie to a month. So if it's World Health Day or World Environmental Day, we may do something around the environment. So we're tying the monthly themes to something that's going on globally.
We tried that, and I think we got in our own way of things, that good intentions and the translation of, again, keeping local interests in mind. We started a benefits newsletter, and then we were having monthly themes, and we said, well, we'll have regional newsletters because benefits are different in each country, and trying regional wasn't even getting us completely there. And then we would choose one, we would plan out our themes for each month, but then one country or one region said, no, that theme doesn't work for us because we've got this other thing going on this month. So we're going to switch this themes month. So, too many cooks in the kitchen, again, everybody wanting their own voice and to customize. So it created more challenges and complexities as we were trying to figure out how to set up this infrastructure and how to do it.
We've set the monthly themes for the first 6 months of next year already. We've communicated that to the teams. There's no deviating from that. It's being driven from the center, but they'll locally adapt it.
Best practices.
No coming back and saying, no, I didn't know we were already doing something different.
That really works well, guys, from a developmental perspective for the teams, that we're going beyond a little bit. We're looking at us as a global company. So we're kind of disassociating ourselves because each country has, this is this theme for this month, and this is this theme for this month. And this way you're doing a one approach for whatever company you're in. So that's really cool, Robert. We're trying to do the same sort of thing. We've done it in North America, but I can't seem to get it in Europe yet. I can't seem to get it in Latin America yet.
We also, just to build on it, we really work hard to get photographs captured locally in the offices and for people to write comments about what their experience was. And then we bubble that back up into an internal communication. So we'll do a recap of September's office day, and we'll have pictures from the Paris office, the London office, the Columbus, Ohio office, whatever it happens to be. And that, I think, reinforces a sense of camaraderie, solidarity, etc., in the organization as well.
Speaking of camaraderie,
and competition,
solidarity, think what we see when you create the whole suite of benefits now, right? So definitely having some pieces and elements in it where your employees can relate to, that it connects with my purpose, is very important, right? That's become very, very critical now in designing the suite of benefits that is offered. And I think, so the experiences I can share is, so we have what we call MAV Cares, MAV for Maveneer, name of the company. So MAV Cares, and you put it on behind that is all the opportunities to get together as teams and contribute to the community that you're a part of. And then again, trying to do this globally. So you would have a saying, okay, this is spring event month, right? And then it's not necessarily a month, it's a couple of months. You have a window, but every site would come up with, this is what we're going to go out and do this month or this particular day that we're setting aside. And it shows, and then again, yes, brings back to the internal news board. This region went ahead and did this for the indigenous community in their region. They went and did this I think there was a refugee camp in UK, which the volunteers went ahead and did. So it also relates to employee benefits, right? Because they feel so much more energized in having been able to contribute to what their purpose is. It's very important for them to have found, one, they see their employer caring for it is important. It's part of the value system. Two, being able to go put time, and the company is willing to let me take time off to do that, from work to do that. So that's very nice. So yes, all these ways to build synergies across borders is another huge advantage of trying to apply this global view of what we offer.
Yeah.
That's sparked another great thought, which is, we only had volunteering time off in the US, 3 days of VTO, and now we rolled that out globally to the entire organization. Now, some countries are kind of scratching their head and not knowing quite what they're meant to do with it, but it's others have just really lapped it up. And part of that's been the global HR team, the regional HR leaders coming together and saying, okay, let's decide on what things we're going to do on a global basis. Sorry, Lisa, you're going to say.
No, just to add on to that, we did the global volunteer time off as well. And I think a lot of what both of you are talking about is it comes down to the broader role that benefit plays in the organization today.
Yeah.
It's not just here's our benefits and it's a silo. It's how our benefits are tying into the company mission and values, into training and development, into our diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. And it's that whole employee value proposition. And what I've been working on is trying to work more across teams, so we're less in silos. And again, talent development, we were partnering with them on a Family Friday First webinars to, have family sessions and leveraging our benefits, and working close with DE&I on listening circles and mental health services, and how we're showing up with our benefits, and partnering with the ERG groups, employee resource groups, around how our benefits support the different employee resource groups, and so looking not only broader globally, but as an organization, how we're tying into and fitting into the very nature of that culture of the organization, and proactively kind of weaving all of this together for that better employee experience, in each country and globally, how it's all tied together. Brian, I probably just went off script, but I'll hand it back to you.
No, that's okay. It's one of those things, you're fine. It's one of those things of, let's kind of, we've been flowing so far. Let's just talk about, because I'm really excited, guys, about how you're linking in change and communication together to really change the lives of your families, your employees. What initiative or program surprised you the most? And, was it able to be replicated across globally? And from a global perspective, did your employees globally kind of hook into it? Did they get as excited as a program might have been that you introduced in the UK or that you introduced in Latin America?
Good question.
I am thanking one of our anonymous attendees. Thank you very much. It's an awesome question.
I think one of the things we did during the pandemic was starting a weekly well-being webinar. And it was having a couple employees, an employee from across the globe. So every week we would have a different employee, different country, different region, along with an expert that I would typically source from one of our vendors. And we'd have a well-being topic each week. And then we would have one of our business partners moderate it. And it was really trying to bring connection to people while everyone was feeling isolated, and sharing best practices and tips. So the employee would say, here's, something that I do to keep myself occupied, or to do physical fitness in my little apartment while we can't go out. And then the expert would kind of talk about whether it was a mental health or a physical or, family, whatever the topic was. And that really resonated really well. So that was one thing we did. And then another one that now that I'm thinking through, that I was pleasantly surprised that we had continually gotten very high involvement is we did mental health safety training during the pandemic as well. And after that, we kept our partner and had her do monthly well-being sessions. So we stopped the weekly and moved to monthly, and she would host it every month with a different topic and focus: psychological safety, or, dealing with loss and grief. And we consistently had a high participation month after month, doing it over on an ongoing basis. And I think it was her credibility. She was not a clinician. She focuses really on suicide prevention based on her personal life experience with her own family, and helping support managers and employees on how to engage and how to see early signs. And her authentication, you know that word. She was authentic, and it was very engaging and interactive between her and the participants. So that was one program we really employees valued and got high utilization out of.
It just occurred to me in May this year, we did a speaker series with a focus on mental health, which I probably thought would be fairly US centric. I don't know why I thought that necessarily, but that was a preconception I came in with and proved not to be the case. But I think the biggest surprise really in it was we had several members of our executive committee share quite personal, vulnerable stories about mental health, either for themselves, how they had dealt in the past with depression, or family members had dealt with depression, or whatever the issue might have been, postpartum, coming out, whatever it was. And those stories and the vulnerability really created a catalyst in the organization for more and more people to share vulnerable stories about their mental health challenges. And not just the mental health challenges, but how they keep themselves fit, strong, mentally secured, if you like. And it was really tremendous to see that open dialogue. And it's starting at the top of the organization. And that's one thing that I feel has been really a privilege with the team that I work with here, is that they do role model a lot of great behavior. So it does start at the top. They do, whether it's literacy, they're the first to come up with a list of their favorite reading books, whether they're business books or crime novels or whatever it happens to be. But the mental health one was a real eye-opener for us and drove utilization of our EAP as well, which was great globally.
Hey, you brought up depression. What other programs globally are you guys working on beyond EAP to support folks through emotional challenges?
I would say one is the program I just mentioned, the monthly mental health programs. And then again, my prior company, we also had a mental well-being platform. So we partnered with one of the vendors in the space with the app where you could get coaching and counseling. And then we would have conversation circles as crisis events happen in a particular location, country, region, to help bring people together with an expert and just, share their feelings. The other thing I'll add to that, Brian, is we did enhance quite a bit our mental health programs when the pandemic hit, and changing our medical coverage. So removing the deductible for out of network for our mental health services was one thing we did with our medical plan. On our long-term disability plan, we removed the lifetime limit on mental health conditions. So most LTD policies, there's like a 3-year limit of benefit payments if your diagnosis is related to a mental illness. We don't do that for any other physical condition. Why would we limit disability coverage for a mental condition and not a physical? So treating mental and physical the same, that we removed that limitation and provision. So look at your medical plans, look at your disability plans, the well-being apps and vendors. There are a large number of things as an employer you can do.
Great point on the cap that you said about the LTD plan. It's a good call out. Yes, it's important to make sure it's treated just like any of the other illness, right? Receives the same level of coverage. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, we call out specifically the mental health side in our kind of benefits motto. Our tagline is benefits to support all of you physically and mentally. So we specifically call that out. And we've consistently done webinars on a variety of different topics, including sort of resilience building as well. And then we've looked at some specific opportunities. We're looking in the UK at how we recruit and manage neurodiverse, I'm not saying that's mental health, but how we recruit and manage neurodiverse candidates. we think there's a unique opportunity for us there in the retail marketplace with that population. So mental health for us is just as important as physical health.
Sure, Robert, that brings up a great point about you can make a very explicit catering to mental health wellness by saying, okay, EAP, and we're doing all these programs for you or benefits. But all of these other aspects that Robert touched upon about managing diverse teams, being able to promote that we're promoting wellness or giving you opportunities to contribute in your community, participate in those. I think all of those goes towards that whole holistic well-being of the employee. And it definitely, that's my point of view, that it does cater to a better mental health by looking at that whole value proposition of what else will give them some psychological safety and all of that, right? So yes, it's a great area. I think it needs a lot of attention and care, and we need to do it different ways. There could be very explicit ways that we talked about, but there are also these other ways that leads up to employees' mental health being. We should give that equal importance.
Yeah, I think that's something really to call out. What you just said is the employee's mental well-being. We can provide all these programs and resources and services. And I do like that holistic approach because like that volunteer time and the social connections all play into this. And I think employers need to look at how they may be contributing to that employee's mental health. So there may be some business practices or operations that unknowingly are negatively impacting employees. And so really having that, holding up the mirror and having that realistic evaluation and analysis of some of the business operations and practices. And is there something that as an organization we're doing that's adversely impacting a large number of our employees? And can we pivot and do something different? And not all organizations think that way, and it's not easy to do. But I think stepping back and looking at it from you're the employee here, you go fix yourself. Here's some resources versus how are we contributing to your mental health?
And as they warned us, we would be not challenged for coming up with conversation or time, and we're getting close to that. This has probably been one of the most exciting groups that I've ever worked on, and I think we could probably go another couple of hours because Robert, you hit a point with me to no end. I am a Boy Scout leader in the United States and do neurodiverse troops. And we're constantly looking at neurodiversity within the workplace, looking at how we go across borders to really make these benefits work. Uma, you hit really hard with not only the EAP stuff, but looking at things that you can be successful in to build that base. Once you have that successful thing, that initiative going and that reputation, everything becomes easier. Lisa talking about, and you were one of the ones that first hit the change management and communications together and kind of looking at that of how do we look at things differently across our borders to make sure that everyone not only feels empowered with the benefits that we're offering, but wants to engage and then wants to suggest other benefits that might make them happy or might make them, be beneficial for their family. So all in all, this has been a fantastic discussion. I'm hoping that Connex gets the hint and that we continue to move this forward and start bringing this up in a global platform with global communications. But it is one of those things that this is a true community practice, sharing information across borders, across professions. We all have different business challenges that we're looking at, but it's kind of amazing. Each one of us we're similar but equal. We all have some of the same challenges. We have some of the same interesting things. I've really felt like I've grown a whole bunch by listening to your input and gave me, you didn't see me write down a couple times where I had to mute. I was writing down ideas. So I shamelessly say that I've leveraged your brilliance, but multiple times today. As we close, does anyone have any comments emotional outbursts.
Ah!
That works.
Awesome job, Brian. Thanks for moderating so well.
Yeah, and agreed. We're here to share and learn from each other, and that's how we make it better for our employees and our team. So always happy to share.
Likewise. Great
Thank you very
conversations.
much, everybody.
I've made notes as well, Brian. So that makes two of us walking away from some ideas that I'm going to shamelessly copy.
Well, and that's the
Brian
other
always
one
has
that
great ideas.
I want to reach out to Connex to see if they can put on the boards some of the ideas that we've come up with and then can start sharing those connections with folks that were on the call or that are listening to this later, so they can reach out to us and we can continue those, that knowledge growth across all of our borders. Thanks
Thank you.
again, everybody.